Welcome to the 9th portfolio report, where today we're going to be covering what happened in February of 2021, which means we will finally be caught up. This is the third video that I've had to put out fairly recently to get caught up with the long hiatus that I had last year. And of course, if you're not familiar with the portfolio reports, I will leave a link card up top where you can check out the playlist of all the other portfolio report videos. So let's jump right into it. Like I talked about on the previous two videos, one of the things I really needed to do was to start contracting out work if I wanted to keep the sites moving and actually make sure stuff's getting done on them. The first hire that I made was for a web development company. Initially, I thought I was going to go with a solo developer, but after looking through a bunch of different people that responded to my job request, this company just seemed like the best, so I ended up going with them. So far, I've gone through a single test project with the developers, and while it's not enough working experience to know they're going to be the right fit in the long term, so far so good. As you can imagine, I want to leverage the developers to implement any development tasks needed across the websites. The next hire that I made was for a VA, or a virtual assistant. Initially, I foresee most tasks being around uploading content, setting up affiliate links, and making fairly straightforward changes to the websites. Over time, I want to build out SOPs in such a way that they work for every single website that only need minor customizations in order to make it perfect for each individual website. Not only will SOPs make work more efficient and consistent, it'll also be an added bonus when I go to sell the sites if they're able to come with SOPs that might add a couple of multiples to the sale price. The next thing I did was determine a play for each individual site. If you don't recall, in last video, or maybe the video before that, I said that I was going to decide what the overall goal of each individual site was at this point in time, with the play being able to change as the sites evolve and as my interest in that site evolves as well. I also moved all of the site project management over to ClickUp. This is going to make managing the sites a little bit easier by utilizing ClickUp's automation systems, as well as setting up some templates for both projects and tasks. The one pain that I have had with ClickUp is that it doesn't really seem to be built around budget management. So if anybody has any ideas around managing budgets within ClickUp, then let me know. Everything that I've looked at so far just hasn't really worked out. So I may have to move back to managing the budget through a spreadsheet rather than through ClickUp, but that's yet to be determined. So let's get into talking about each individual site. The first site is the sports site. So the 4 pieces of content that were created beforehand that weren't uploaded due to the issue I was having with the affiliate plugin that was handling the actual affiliate links. One of those pieces of content has been uploaded, another one of those pieces of content will be uploaded sometime in March, and 2 of those pieces of content are completely messed up and need to be edited before they can be posted. It's completely on me for not checking beforehand, but these pieces of content, the format is just not correct with what was sent over to the writer to match the design and all the areas of content that need to be filled in for the review page templates. I hadn't checked any of the content beforehand because of the issue we were facing with we couldn't upload content in the first place. After I found out after trying to upload one piece of content, I just didn't even look at all the other ones, and while I focused on trying to figure out how to fix the plugin issue. But because of that, it's been several months, I think, at this point since the content was actually created. So there's probably a pretty low likelihood that I can actually get it edited without taking on additional costs. So I'm going to have to take a pretty close look at that content to see if it's just going to be a minor workaround of what's there, maybe cutting out some stuff or adding in some minor things, or if I'm going to need to pay for it to be edited, or worst case scenario, completely rewritten. In terms of the play for this site, I've decided to grow the site. I debated for a while whether or not I wanted to move towards selling the site fairly soon, because it does face some of the same issues that tech sites face, in that products are constantly going out to date, there are new variations coming out all the time, and it's really hard to keep up with. Plus, the average cost of a product is lower than in tech, and people don't buy as often in tech, so it has all the same downsides as tech, but none of the same upside. I might change my mind in the future, but for right now, I want to grow the site, because if I sold the site, I'd probably end up finding myself buying another site, and this one already has its foundation set. This one has been worked on for a while. With a brand new site, it would just be taking on a lot more work that I probably shouldn't be taking on right now until I get myself situated with all the other sites that I'm working on. So for right now, I'm going to focus on just growing the site, but I wouldn't be surprised if sometime later this year, I decided to start moving towards a sale instead. In terms of performance in February, this site did $95.95 in revenue and had $48.20 in expenses. Organic traffic is also on an uptrend, which wouldn't surprise me if it continued to trend up now that we are only a month or two away from being in season for this niche. And overall, year over year, traffic looks to be about double or so. So that is quite promising for where earnings might be comparing year over year as well. This brings the site's total profit and loss to a loss of $2,073.28. The next site is the Micro Niche Outdoors site. In February, I started moving over from Table Labs to Ninja Tables for a variety of reasons. This is the test site that the developers worked on to make that transition happen. One of the reasons why I wanted to move over to Ninja Tables and away from Table Labs was that a couple of the other sites that I've bought also use Ninja Tables, so this will just be a reducive overall cost by not having to pay for multiple tables at the same time, or table plugins that is, as well as Ninja Tables just being a lot more flexible and customizable. Table Labs was something I was a big fan of when I first started. I wrote about liking it quite a bit, but over time I found it harder to update products, and there would sometimes be bugs with the back end, which would make it so I might have to make the same change 4 or 5 times just to have it go through, and that just got really annoying, and it just made sense to change over to something that was going to be less of a pain to use, and Ninja Tables just simply made sense because it was already in use on a couple of other sites that I bought. In terms of the play for this site, this is a site that I want to hold. It's a site that has been relatively stable in its earnings since I bought it and for a year or two prior to me buying it. And in terms of its core micro niche, the site's basically completed. There's not a whole lot more content that can be created within the single micro niche that it's in without breaking out a bunch of individual single product pages, which isn't out of the question. But in terms of big changes, without adding another monetization source or another traffic source, the site's essentially quote unquote done. Now, I do want to grow the site. I do want to break into additional product categories, but the other sites just simply need to take priority, especially when this site is one that I can trust fairly well to have it sit for a little bit longer while I give my attention to other sites that can't sit for quite as long and need to get caught up and up to speed. In terms of traffic and earnings, revenue was $214.13 in February, with expenses at $80.40. Overall revenue has been going down for the past 2 months, but I'm not worried about it because it is still up quite a bit compared to October, in which it was only doing about $88. In September before that, it did about $90. So revenue right now is still looking pretty good to what it's done in the past. Taking a look at traffic, that's also looking pretty good. Organic traffic is a little bit under double what it was in November, and it is lower than it was January, but not by a ton, and it's fairly level with where it was in December. So overall, both earnings and traffic are looking quite good on this site. And this brings the total P&L for the site to a loss of $2,049.20. The next site is the Broad Tech site. This is a site that I'm just going to hold for now because of how much it was hit into the December algorithm update, and right now it just doesn't make sense for me to dedicate resources to this site while I could work on some of the other sites. Once the other sites are sorted, I do want to move this site into being worked on again, but for right now it just makes more sense to hold on to it. Looking at traffic and earnings, the site only did $12.77 in revenue in February, which is less than half of the just under $51 that it did in January. So the site is continuing to drop. Traffic isn't looking much better, where you can clearly see that from November, traffic just kept going down. It got slashed in almost half November to December, and then over half December to January. and then a little bit under half again, January to February. This brings the site's total profit and loss to a loss of $607.34. Overall, I'm not too worried about this, even though the site is being cut in half every month for the past couple of months. Even if it just levels out, my overall loss would be at a minimum, even if the site was completely unsellable, even if the site went to zero next month. Overall, my risk would be fairly low, so I'm more than comfortable to just let the site sit. If it continues trending down, that's what it does. If it goes back up, that's great. But overall, I'm not too worried about the site being essentially decimated while still being at a loss. The next site is my automotive site. This is a site that I want to grow because it's been the most profitable site that I've worked on to date. I still like the niche quite a bit.
I like the stock.
The site's earnings are quite a bit lower than where they were at their peak, and it's been almost a year since I've actually worked on the site. So I think it's in my best interest to continue to, or rather start working on the site again and grow it to not only where it was beforehand, but maybe even far beyond what it was making prior to when it started dropping off. Looking at revenue and traffic, the site did $337.84 in revenue in February and $0 in expenses. This is lower than what it did in January, but pretty much on par with what it did in December, so it could be leveling out. Looking at traffic and revenue, the site did $337.84 in revenue in February. And in terms of traffic, while the revenue is down, traffic is up, which could be a good sign. We might be looking at more revenue in March, but it's still less than half, or roughly half, of where it was before it dropped back in November. This brings the site's total profit and loss to a profit of $7,744.60. The fifth site is the niche outdoor site. The site actually saw negative earnings during the first 9 days of the month, which I wrongly assumed meant that the site was dead. What happened was the plugin that handles the affiliate links simply broke, so all I had to do was log into the backend and click the reauthenticate button, which means that I missed out on about $100 to $150 in earnings if I had just caught that issue earlier. This is one of the sites that I want to grow. This is a really interesting niche that people will spend a lot of money on, but it's also a niche that people are usually fairly educated on and tend to be fairly passionate about. But there's also a couple of bigger players in the space that I'm going to keep an eye on, which can give me a pretty good idea of the different monetization and traffic sources that the site can have. The site did $336.59 in revenue, which is lower than both December and January, but is pretty strong when compared to how it was doing a couple months prior to and leading up to the holidays. Traffic is also looking pretty strong. Traffic is down compared to January, but when looking at December, traffic is right on par. So even though earnings are down, traffic is looking good. This brings the site's total P&L to a profit of $997.54. The next site is a niche tech site, and this is one of the sites that I want to grow. This is the tech site that I was talking about prior that's not in a typical tech niche. And because of that, I believe that this atypical niche, if you will, won't have the same drawbacks as the typical consumer tech product niche does, where products are constantly being out of date, need to be updated, and it's really hard to keep up with all the changes to the content that you need to make unless you want your links going to a bunch of unavailable products. I don't think, at least in theory, that this site will run into the same problems. That's yet to be seen, but because of that, I do want to grow the site. I think it's a really interesting niche to be in, and so I want to see what I can get out of this space, and if my theory is correct, this could be one of the stronger sites that I have. Looking at traffic and revenue, revenue is actually surprisingly down to $327.01. Well, it's not unexpected that revenue would be down compared to the holidays, but even looking at months prior, even back to August, September, October of last year, it's surprising how low revenue was compared to traffic. So I'm hoping that February was just a slow month and that we'll see revenue be more on par with the amount of revenue that traffic has generated in the past in March, but we'll see when that time comes. And this brings the site's total profit and loss to a loss of $3,630.16. And the last site is Niche Tech Site number 2. And this is a site that I've decided that I actually want to flip or sell. Despite the revenue and traffic drop in December, this is a great site. It looks great, the content quality is great, and there's a lot of potential for the site. But the space that the site is in is a general consumer tech space, which means that the site is a lot higher maintenance to take care of. The reason why I want to sell the site is that I'm way too overexposed right now in the tech space with, I think, half of my sites roughly are in the tech space right now. Now, while I do want to sell the site to lower my exposure to the tech space and possibly buy a site that's in something else other than tech, I do need to see the traffic and earnings recover at least probably to about $200 to $300 a month before I'm willing to start planning my exit. So I am setting the site up in a way that I have the intent to sell it, but I do need to see the revenue reach at least those numbers before I really start planning what a sale would look like and at what level and at what amount I'd be looking to sell for. Looking at the revenue and traffic, the revenue for February was $116.56, which is about on par with what it did in January. So I'm hoping this means that the earnings will have leveled out and that it won't continue to fall like it's been doing since November. While earnings were up month over month, traffic was still down, but same thing with earnings, I'm hoping that the traffic levels out and that we don't continue to see traffic drop. This brings the site's total profit and loss to a loss of $8,122.96. I think I said the last site was the final site, but I was wrong. This one is actually the final site. So the last site is Niche Tech Site number 3. Not really a surprise as to why I want to get out of tech. Just like the Niche Outdoor site, I didn't realize that the affiliate plugin actually broke on this site. It broke sometime in mid-January, but I didn't realize that until sometime in February, meaning that I missed out on a couple weeks of earnings. Since the site essentially completely tanked in December, not a whole lot was actually missed out on though. This is another site that I'm going to hold for now. Overall, the site's only about 5 pages. 2 of them are money pages, but only one of them I think even has affiliate codes on them. So it's just not worth working on right now. If for some reason the site did rebound to at least around $100 a month or so while being held, then I'd consider moving it out of hold over to Grow. But right now I don't need the additional exposure in tech. I don't need another site to worry about. So I'm more than happy to just hold on to the site and then sell the site either at a, if it's averaging $30, $50 a month, that's great, or just sell it for parts and roughly break even, maybe making a small profit on the site overall. But I don't plan on having this site for the long term because I don't want to continue to have just more and more tech sites. But if the site were to rebound in earnings, then it would be worth maybe putting some more effort into to grow it a little bit more. Looking at the revenue and traffic for the site, in February it did $28.31 in revenue, which is quite a bit above the $2.27 that it did in January. A lot of that is attributed to, of course, the plugin being broken and then fixed sometime in February, which allowed the site to actually start making money again. Looking at the traffic of the site, traffic also seems to have leveled out in February, being pretty close to where it was in January. So if the site ended up averaging between $20 and $30 a month in revenue, it's enough that if I did decide to sell the site, it wouldn't be at a loss. And this brings the site's total profit and loss to a loss of $528.41. While the last report was fairly pessimistic, right now I'm feeling quite optimistic about the sites. I don't think that I'm likely to lose money on any of the individual sites unless they were to drop in earnings again for whatever reason. I'm also quite excited about the hiring of both the development company and my VA because they're going to help me keep the sites moving. So that's all I have for you in this video. A like and subscribe is always appreciated. And if you liked this video, please share it with your friends. And if you didn't like this video, please share it with your enemies.